the governor and I, with the Supervisor Mitchell and a wonderful group of service providers and leaders, both in mental health and behavioral health services here in LA County, just had a chance to see sort of one of the models that we're really excited about with the Care Court plan that the governor announced just last week. We had a chance to meet a couple of clients that lives were literally transformed because of a program like this. They're certainly in a situation that they're in part because they didn't get the services they need. That included both the clinical services for severe behavioral health conditions, as well as the housing services that we know is that sort of 1-2 punch. So we had a great conversation with a couple of the individuals, one person who was here for a while and now is on their own in the community, and another person who is seeing their life transform now, and joined by the people that made it work. The service provider here, SSG Project 180, we're at Cress House here in South Los Angeles, Supervisor, your district, but really a program that came together because of this county's willingness nearly, I think, 7 years ago to build something called the Office of Diversion and Reentry that challenged the whole notion that you couldn't treat severe mental illness effectively in a community in a supportive model. And from the lessons of programs like this, the Care Court vision comes together, one that says we don't have to wait for people to be so sick that they need to be conserved, so sick that they're jailed in jails in counties or in prisons and treated forcibly with medications or other things that happen at that point in someone's trajectory, that we can do this upstream in a bit, not necessarily when people aren't as sick, because they're quite sick, living on corners, not making the medical decisions because of difficulties with insights and judgment that we know that they can. And we had a chance just to hear a little bit about the ideas of the program that was announced last week. Had a chance to engage with judicial officers here in LA County about what that role and how that might play together. And it gives us a lot of hope that we're onto something that could support thousands of Californians that today are living on our streets, caught up in systems where they're not therapeutic, they're not as supportive as what we just had a chance to witness here. So, Supervisor, to you, your team, the amazing work that this county continues to do on so many things, just really congratulations and thank you, and I'll turn it to you.
Can we get your first and last name?
Oh, yeah, Mark Galley, M-A-R-K-G-H-A-L-Y, and I'm Secretary for Health and Human Services for California.
Thank you, Dr. Galley. I'm Holly Mitchell, member of the LA County Board of Supervisors representing the 2nd District that we're standing in the middle of, and I have the privilege of chairing the board. And I was here today to really be a part of the learning experience with the governor and to really brag on LA County and the Office of Diversion and Reentry, you know, recognizing that the board before I got here had a true vision and came up with programs like alternatives to incarceration, homes for health, ODR, as ways to address the need that's evident in every community across LA County. And so to hear the announcement of the governor's new concept and model, we said we've been doing that for a while right here in LA County, and really hope that our sister counties across the state will look to us as a model, learn from our early experiences, and are prepared to launch this really innovative, important program. So I'm glad to be here today.
How does somebody come to be involved in this program, and how does that compare to the Care Court that the governor's proposing?
Yeah, you know, I want to call up one of, no, it's okay, Dr. Kristen Ochoa. Can I put you on the spot? Dr. Ochoa is the medical director over the Office of Diversion and Reentry, and helped create with so many other partners programs like this. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how they get into this program, and then I can talk a little bit about how somebody gets into the Care Court program different than this one.
Hi, I'm Kristen Ochoa with the Department of Health Services with Los Angeles County Office of Diversion and Reentry, and people get into our program by basically we do court interventions with persons who have serious mental or physical disorders. We work with the lawyers and the judges in the courts. We ask for their release, and we promise services. We promise excellent clinical treatment, and we promise housing. And so where you are right now is a place where people live in an open setting who are often have histories of homelessness and serious mental disorders, and they're in community here and able to stay out of the jail and out of the emergency rooms and hospital systems because of these services.
Yeah, please.
I was just going to say, a sitting judge of LA County's mental health court, Judge Bianco, was here also, and could tell really the governor firsthand when we have services in spaces like this, how it empowers the court to then help come up with creative sentencing options. The two clients that were here and shared with the governor, I think had come before his court. And he, could see the benefit of having this as a sentencing option, and to see the amazing progress they've made in a relatively short period of time.
Clarify, given the vast demand in this county, how many people would you estimate could use these kinds of services in a program like this, and how many are there out there it's not available to them?
I'll ask Dr. Ochoa, who runs Office of Diversion, ODR, to respond. She could give you those numbers.
Yeah. Within the jail on any given day, there are over 5,000 people with mental disorders who need services, and actually the RAND Corporation did a study, and they estimate that over 61% of them could be diverted to services and clinical services and housing if we had the resources. And just in terms of the homeless population, I'm sure anyone who lives in Los Angeles sees the need, persons with serious mental disorders without treatment, right, and kind of what that looks like and the suffering. And we know that's around 50,000 people in Los Angeles.
How many?
So, at least 50,000 in Los
Doctor,
Angeles.
can you just clarify, so in this program, if somebody is facing criminal charges, this is an alternative to those criminal charges?
Yes, so we have, there are different sort of models. If one is incompetent to stand trial, sometimes we can bring someone out into the community for restoration instead of having them have to be in a jail or in a state hospital. Or there's mental health diversion. So instead of having to be in jail or be sentenced to prison, you can come out and adhere to your treatment in the community.
So, I'm sorry, what would, like, the governor what would that mean for ODR? Would it mean anything different for you guys?
It would mean more tools. It would mean more opportunity to help even more people, and because it's resourced. And also, it's just yet one more tool. Whenever we have court involvement, it's incredibly helpful to get folks to be able to stay in the programs.
Real quick, also, when did this program begin?
Our program, Office of Diversion and Reentry, 2015.
And how many people do you work with now? How many people are here, and how many people have you diverted per year?
Yeah, since the Office of Diversion and Reentry began in 2015, we've removed from jail to services and housing more than 7,000 people in Los Angeles.
How many do they treat here at a time?
Here at a time, over 30 people are in the beds upstairs.
So can any one of you guys explain what CARE does above and beyond LA County Mental Health Court that already exists?
We actually work not just in the mental health courts.
So what does the CARE idea do to take the LA County Mental Health concept and expand it?
Sure, thanks. And first off, let me just say a few things about what Care Court is and how it's different here. Part of the reason why we came here today is to show how the continuum of services in a model like this that can be applied in Care Court can change and transform lives. But how is Care Court a little different? First off, there is no requirement to have a criminal charge. Everyone who is housed here went through the criminal justice system, was found to have serious behavioral health condition, usually a serious mental illness that was undertreated or untreated, incompetent to stand trial, needing usually state hospitalization for many, many months. And this program says, let's challenge that, let's get people into the community and give them the exact same thing in an unlocked, supported setting with medications. Care Court says even more upstream. It says before they're arrested, let's take a set of diagnoses, people with schizophrenia spectrum disorders, psychotic spectrum disorders, who we estimate it's not everyone in the county jail with mental illness, it's not everyone living on the streets. It's a set number of people. We estimate somewhere between 5 and 10, maybe 12,000 across the entire state that could be eligible to be referred, not by law enforcement, not just by a judge who meets them in the courtroom, but by a provider, a loving community member, a family member, a hospital staff member who's treating them on a 5150 hold, that's 72-hour, or the 14-day holds, who come into contact with other programs so they don't need to be charged with a crime. They don't need to be necessarily hospitalized per se, but we expect many individuals who are in those settings will find themselves in the Care Court model as well.
What do you anticipate being your response when people who believe in freedom at any choice object to the notion of forcing someone into treatment?
Well, I mean, we're having those conversations every single day since the announcement. We're engaging with individuals to talk about how this is different. What happens after the arrest are people are... Yeah, I'm saying that before the arrest, right? But what happens after the arrest is that a whole set of things do occur that end up changing and bending the arc of that person's lives. As we see here, 7,000 people through the Office of Diversion and Reentry, over 31 now here in this building today, and 100 sites like this, not exactly the same size, but like it across the county, and many more across the state. So when we have the conversations with disability rights partners, individuals who are asking those hard questions, we say we're here together to talk in a collaborative partnership way on how we change the outcomes that so many individuals that we know suffer on the streets unnecessarily. I often say homelessness has many faces. This is but one, but this is one of the most tragic and frankly correctable, treatable forms because of the innovations and progress we've made on behavioral health care, on mental health care. The medications that we can use today are different than they were in the 1960s, open settings, the staffing models, etc.
So allow me to ask one more question. 42nd Street and Broadway, there's a woman sitting on the sidewalk surrounded by a mountain of trash. Councilman Price's office said they've been out there many times with outreach workers. She's still there. The system does not allow, maybe it's not allowed is the right word, is it frustrating that your hands are tied in a situation like that? It seems to be the perfect example of who the care program would benefit, yet she's out on the street today, you're just proposing this, and it may be a year down the road before anything happens, if at all.
Look,
there's a question in there
yeah,
somewhere
no,
on the frustration with the inability to do anything.
I hear your question, and I will say, as a physician, as somebody who tries to be a healer, yes, it's frustrating and it's sad. And when I say homelessness has many faces, that's a face that I think we can make a difference with because of the Care Court model. And my hope is that through some work, having a rich staffing model around them, having a housing outcome that's meaningful, that the individual you're referencing and many like her in our state, in this city, in this part of the city, can find benefit from Care Court. And the idea that we're going to be able to roll this out and build it statewide, I think gives us hope that we'll reach all of the individuals that we can with this intervention.
Clarify the propulsion part of the Care Court and how it ties into a program like this, because it sounds like people come into this program are already eligible to do so. So is this just substituting a different court for the criminal court, or am I missing something?
Well, no, I mean, it is a civil process, so it's not a criminal process. That's difference number one. Secondly, the number of entry points, the different folks who can refer, it's not just law enforcement, it's not just a judge or an attorney. It is community members, family members. It are clinicians who are taking care of individuals. A whole set of new referents, if you will, are allowed in this program. And as I said before, the type of court order here, the medication orders as part of a felony IST commitment, incompetent to stand trial commitment, are involuntary medication orders. Those can be, in certain settings, given forcibly. In the care court model, there is not forced medications, right? This is a part of a comprehensive care plan that if the client does not participate fully, it could lead to other actions, but it doesn't have a consequence per se of anything specific. But the status quo interventions, whether that's an LPS conservatorship or facing charges that that were being held in abeyance, those would happen. So the compulsion component is certainly not our focus. The compulsion component is part of what we look at both through the courts on the individual a bit, but also holding us as government accountable to provide the suite of services, that collection of things, housing and medications, are to support them to get through. And
why is
questions,
that
Dr.
better
Kelly.
than a voluntary commitment to this program, which critics say is actually better?
Well, and I would agree that it's better, and that's part of the conversation right now is there a component here where people could look to say, hey, this sounds terrific, this sounds important for a loved one, and could there be a pathway there? And that's why last week when the governor announced this, we said we're announcing a framework. We're announcing a framework and then a table to have a conversation to not just accept what we had already thought, but how do we keep making it better? And that's part of the conversation that we're having now.
Two questions, Dr. Kelly. So one, just to clarify, you said there won't be any forced medication as part of these care courts?
There are not forced medications.
Okay, do you think the state was late to maybe adopting something like these, or at least proposing something like this?
As far as I know, we've all waited too long to serve some of the sickest people in our communities who are suffering and dying early, facing systems that they shouldn't be a part of that continue to traumatize them. So I'm proud of our state for leaning in and trying to ask a different sort of question, not necessarily getting mired in the dialogues that we have seen year over year in Sacramento and throughout our counties about, well, what about LPS law? What about Laura's law? We're really trying to approach it from a different, and I would say fresh view, with programs like this in mind, and a willingness to continue to invest in the behavioral health continuum. $3 billion in the last 2 years of budget opportunities to build programs like this, new innovations in Medicaid, support for additional flexibilities with Mental Health Services Act dollars. I think we've been building up to this moment, and frankly, I didn't know that we would be able to do it this year. I thought this maybe was a year or two down the road, but because of the accelerated investment, we thought this is the time to do it.
Dr. Kelly, can you just explain, obviously this is still a framework, as you said, but one of the biggest issues that we hear from providers at places like Bridge Homes that are actually getting people into shelter is that, that they don't necessarily have someone on staff who can deal with these mental health issues, and sometimes it takes 2 weeks for the county to get someone there. How do you imagine sort of care court and the resources that you and the governor have talked about putting into this issue kind of addressing that hole?
Well, I mean, look, we are talking about the sickest of the sick in our communities, and we're telling all of us, including ourselves, we need to do more to prioritize them. So if there are staff available to do work, we're asking that this is the population we work for and for first. So in that way, we know that this is going to be challenging for some counties, and we're willing to work and support them so that they can deliver these sorts of models. And the housing piece, not just a county issue, a city issue as well. So bringing together all forms of government, all forms of those who are responsible to deliver these services, I think is really at the heart of care court, and one of the, I would say, fresh and different pieces compared to other models of systems created to solve similar issues.
How would a care court person then encounter someone that shows up at a Bridge Home and clearly could be diagnosed with some of the issues that you talked about, for example? How would you imagine that unfolding?
Well, first off, that individual could be referred by that program into the care court program. Then a full clinical assessment follows, and if they meet the criteria laid out that I've gone through briefly here, They would then have a comprehensive care plan created that includes both the team that supports them, medications if needed, and a housing plan. And then our partners in the cities, our partners in the counties, will be held accountable by the courts to deliver those services to that individual. And this is a way that we say no longer can the sickest of the sick just not be in the line altogether, but we need them to be towards the front.
So Dr. Galley, how do you
How much this is going to cost? I know that Rand report also said that the state's short of something like 4,000 psychiatric beds. That's a lot of money. How much?
Well, the governor, I mean, separate and apart from CareCourt, but one of the reasons why we're able to talk about a program like this in this framework is because there's been incredible investment over the last couple of years, $3 billion in specifically the behavioral health continuum. That includes beds, locked psychiatric beds is one form, but also many, many unlocked community-based placements like this one being built up. So that infrastructure is getting built. And the investment in the courts, the investment in what we call the supporter role, which is new in the CareCourt model, that person is going to be there basically to walk beside each participant in the CareCourt program to really draw out their own personal decision making, and we hope, once stabilized, really help support creating what is so many of you know as advanced directives, being able to express your wishes clearly about what happens if this scenario. In mental health, we talk about mental health advanced directives. Somebody who experiences a relapsing and remitting disease can say in a moment of clarity, a moment of stability, this is what I would hope happens to me down the road if I decompensate. And having that in place, we think would certainly help avoid some of the trauma that goes into repeated hospitalizations and decompensation and living on the street. So there's a number of components that are being invested in the courts, the supporter role, these new infrastructure dollars, and then really calling on the counties and cities to say, we've provided a lot of resources for behavioral health, for housing. How do we make sure that these are the individuals who are prioritized for those?
So is there a sense of...
A few more questions. Go ahead to the last minute as to how much this could...
No,
what's already been spent.
Yeah, we're working through that now, trying to understand the components, and then each county will need a little bit of a different set of resources to make sure that they're prepared to sort of ramp up over time.
Phil, you got one last question?
Yeah, is there a sense of urgency here? How soon can you make this a reality?
Well, I mean, we feel like we're urgent. We're rolling something out now. We're talking about getting this done this year, this legislative year, and then asking counties to be ready to go with us, asking the courts to be ready to go. Those partnerships have been strong already. The conversations are great. These things don't happen overnight, as much as I wish they did. But I think we're putting in the energy, and the governor is going to be talking to communities up and down the state over the next many weeks about exactly this, so that it's not just a priority behind the doors, but it's a priority to all of Californians to say, this is what we're about. This is part of that California way he talked about the other day, and I'm proud to be part of it as well.
Anywhere from the legislature on where this is at, though, drafting?
No, we, those conversations, thank God I don't have to do every part of this. There's a lot of really smart, brilliant, experienced people having those conversations. My hope is, and I know this from my relationship with many of them, that this is a top priority for them. They hear it from their constituents, they hear it from their county soups that they support. So I think we're all coming together at a really critical time to get this done.